Cheap versus not. Can this Vevor thickness planer compete in any way against one of the best compact thickness planers on the market today? To be completely transparent, I want you all to know that Vevor sent me this unit for free to try out. I have no obligations to them. I am going to give you an unbiased review, and hopefully they won't hate me when I'm done with this video. To fairly assess and rate the Vevor thickness planer, we're going to break this up into 5 categories in which you're going to be comparing the two models. The first category is overall construction. The next category are the features that each of these machines have or don't have. The third category is going to be how they actually perform. We're going to be running lumber through them. The fourth category is going to be how the dust collection performs. And the fifth category is overall value. Should you buy the Vevor, and who would this be right for? Right out of the box, you can tell that the construction quality is not the same as Dewalt's. You have the metal components are not machined well. There's some rough spots to them. There's actually some dents and dings on the inside here. The gauge of the metal that is used for the housing is pretty thin compared to some of the other models that I've seen out there. The Dewalt, on the other hand, is super solid. I mean, it weighs over 100 pounds, so that's probably one of the reasons why it weighs so much. The extension tables are pretty solid. The inner portion is pretty hard, and it doesn't seem to have any movement if you press down on it. There is a lot more plastic on the Dewalt, but it's a thick plastic, and I've owned it for 2 years and have not had any problems with it, so I'm not concerned about that. But overall, the Dewalt just seems a lot more solid. Now, for a small machine, Dewalt packed a lot of features in this one. One of the things I love about it, it has a preset depth control, and all the more common depths that you would probably mill your wood down to are here. Another cool feature here is that you have 2 different speeds that you can mill down your wood. If you're rough milling, you would go faster, and when you're getting close to your thickness, then you would slow it down and get a smoother, cleaner finish. Another really cool feature is that you have a material removal gauge, which allows you to control very easily how much material you want to take off with each pass. These are things that you're not going to find on the Vevor. On the other hand, on the Vevor, you have these little metal teeth-like things that are supposed to be the indicator that you're getting close to the blade when you're passing your wood through, but you don't actually have a gauge that tells you how much you're going to be removing with each pass, so you're going to have to get a feel for it. Now, Vevor has one thing that the DeWalt model does not have, and that is these rollers, which might come in handy if you're stacking wood up top and you're trying to run them through over and over again if you have multiple pieces. So that's a little option that I guess you could say that DeWalt didn't think of. Another feature that you're going to get with the Vevor is that they all have a base. Automatically, you get the base with the unit. Now it's time to give them a test. Now I have 2 pieces of Douglas fir scrap laying around, which I'm going to use first, and then I'm going to run some hardwood through it like walnut and see how that performs. Now, before we can run them through, I do need to flatten one side, so I am going to run them through on my jointer first, and then we're going to do the test. So this is Dewalt, and Dewalt did a really good job. There is a little bit, and this is not snipe, this is, I don't know if this might be because it's a soft material, but it really isn't bad, but a little bit noticeable here. But if you look at the Vevor, you can probably notice it a little bit better here. Yeah, there's a lot more here. You can feel it, almost as if there's a problem with the blade. So part 2 of the test is I'm going to run some hardwood through. This is walnut. Let's see how they perform. I am going to use some chalk to get a better look at how this thing was planed. So now we can see things a little bit better. What I did not notice until I rubbed the chalk down is that there is a little bit of snipe here. If you run your finger over it, it's barely noticeable, but it is there. These lines, they're normal. In fact, I don't even really feel much here, and with a little light sanding, these would disappear. Now let's take a look at the other. Now this is the Vevor, and I noticed also that there is some snipe here, and this is noticeable. I actually noticed this even before I ran the chalk. So the snipe is more prominent here. But what I did not realize is that this line right here, this is not normal, and then when I rub my finger this way, I can feel it. So I'm wondering if there is a nick on the blade or something. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to run it on this side and then see if we get that same mark, because if we do, then there's a problem with the blade itself. Yep. So we can tell here, it's still here. So there's definitely something going on with that blade. Making sure this machine is unplugged, I am checking to see if there is any nicks on the blade. I am noticing that right here, there is a little nick right here on the blade. So, you know, it's unfortunate that the stock blades have a defect. One more thing to look at in regards to the planing of this machine is the thickness consistent from one end of the board to the other? It should be close, and if it isn't, then there's a problem with the tuning of the machine itself, and that's a bit of a headache. The Dewalt is much more finely tuned. There was a difference of about 5/100ths of a millimeter. Vevor was not as close. There was a difference of about 2/10ths of a millimeter. So what do those numbers mean? Well, if you're using the Dewalt, this piece is off by 5/100ths of a millimeter. If you had a piece twice the width, you'd be off by 1/10 of a millimeter from one side to the other. Not noticeable, not a big deal. However, when you're using the Vevor, you're already off by 2/10ths of a millimeter, which means that if you doubled the width of this, you'd be off by almost 1/2 of a millimeter, which is not a big deal. But if you are doing something that really does require serious precision, it might become a problem. It depends on what kind of work you're doing. Now I want to see how this Vevor handles a longboard, so I'm going to run through some cherry, which is a hardwood, and we'll see how it does. Looking at them side by side, what a difference. This is pretty clean, and of course Vevor, you can just see the blade marks everywhere. I mean, it's pretty bad. The Dewalt has a little bit of snipe at the end here, but it's barely noticeable. I don't notice, there's a little bit of snipe here, but this is not very noticeable either. But on the other end of Vevor's board, there is some noticeable snipe. You can feel it. It's not bad. It really isn't that bad. Does it plane wood? Yeah, it does. But when comparing to the Dewalt, it's just a whole nother level here. Now let's talk about dust collection. One of the features that I did not mention about the Dewalt is that it has a chip ejection system. It kind of has a fan that blows the chips out, so it does help with your dust collection even if you don't have a dust collector. On the other hand, the Vevor does not have anything like that at all, and when you compare the two, the Dewalt did a very nice job of keeping the area clean, and as you can see, the Vevor did not. Like most of the larger machines in my shop, the Dewalt hooks up to a standard 4-inch dust collection hose, which is very nice because if you have a dust collection system like I have, everything's compatible. On the other hand, Vevor does not use that same port. In fact, Vevor has a strange size. It's just under 2 inches, and it doesn't hook up to my dust collection unit, and it doesn't hook up to my shop vac either, so I had to rig something up for this demonstration. Before we can give a fair assessment of the overall value, let's look at the other 4 categories that we have already discussed, and let's give them a rating. I'm going to be using a 5-star rating. So the first one that we talked about was overall construction. I am going to give it a 3 out of 5 stars because it is definitely not like the Dewalt in quality, but it still does weigh in at like 75 pounds, and it is pretty solid, and believe it or not, there's less plastic on this unit than there is on the Dewalt, so still not too bad. Now, when comparing the features on these two units, it was pretty obvious that the Dewalt had a lot of bells and whistles, and the Vevor did not. So my rating as far as features goes for the Vevor is going to be a 2.5. Now, some bells and whistles might not necessarily mean much as far as quality goes in a product, but in this case, the Dewalt had a lot of things that really created a much better and safer experience when using their planer. And also the end result was that it was just a better planer all around when it came to planing wood. Now that being said, let's rate the planing quality on this machine. I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars, mainly because in comparison to the Dewalt, the boards that were run through on this machine were not as smooth. Also, don't forget we had a defect in one of the blades, so I'm questioning the quality of the blades that come with this machine. And also, you're going to need to fine-tune this machine because the thickness across the board was not as close as we would like it. Now let's talk about overall value. And what that means is, what am I getting and how much am I going to pay for it? Now, for Vevor's thickness planer, right now I've seen it on Amazon for around $300. In comparison to Dewalt, if you want what I have with the base and the extension tables, it's going to run you about $900. That is a huge price difference. But we also saw a huge difference in quality in every way, including how well they do their main function, which is planing lumber. Does that mean that this unit is not worth buying? If you can afford it and you do use the machine enough to make it worth your while, I would buy the Dewalt. It is a great machine. It's quality. It's compact. It's a perfect machine for a small shop. However, if you're just starting out, I would have probably bought this Vevor thickness planer because for the price of this machine compared to that, I could buy this thickness planer, my drill press, my bandsaw, and a sanding unit, and I could still have some money left over. If you're building a shop, you don't have tools, this is probably the way to go. Now, my rating for overall value in this case is going to be a 4 because, again, you're getting a planer. It gets the job done for $300 compared to $900. Now, the overall rating for this Vevor thickness planer is going to end up being a 2.9 out of 5. Which is not terrible considering the price point of $300. If you want more information on these two units, I will link them both in the description below. I hope this video makes it a little bit easier for you in making a decision on whether or not you're going to be buying this unit or another unit. If you have any questions about either one of these, please put them in the comments and I will do my best to get back to you. If you're new to the channel, please check out my videos. I have a whole bunch of videos out there, mostly DIY stuff. And if you like what you see, please think about subscribing. I hope everyone is doing well and I will see you in the next one.